Hello, my name is Star, and today the movies that we're going to talk about are Bank Job and Outsourced. So I'm going to go through just a couple of similarities that I saw between the movies. If I'm being honest, it was kind of hard to find similarities. There are some, but it was like they're very two different movies, and yeah, I just feel like the the similarities, like I'll talk about in a sec. There are definitely some, but like I said, they were very different movies, so it was kind of hard to it wasn't as clear and cut as some of the other pairings. But regardless, I think they were both really good movies. Um, so as far as similarities come, with Bank Job, I think that one main similarity between the two movies is that with Bank Job, um, there was financial hardship um, in the beginning of the movie, right? And the bank robbery was based on a true story that happened. And I think the timeline is the same because I looked it up and the timeline is like 1970. I think 1971, and in real life, when the bank robbery was happening, I think it was also 1970, because I know that they eventually got arrested in 1973. But yeah, they're basically the same timeline. And the reason I think that the main man Terry and eventually his crew ended up robbing the bank is because during that time in Britain, the UK, there was financial hardship in the 1970s, and a lot of that was due to post-war high inflation, unemployment rates, and there was a lot of strikes happening, a lot of working strikes that people were doing throughout the areas, and I think that stands true to the movie's history, and so I think that's the reason why he felt he had no other choice but to rob the bank. And there was something else I was gonna say. I forgot what I was gonna say, but yeah, basically that. Um, and then it's kind of similar to Outsource because in Outsource, in the beginning, there is a little bit of financial hardship around the corner kind of for the people working in the office that the movie kind of opens in, um because there's mention of the boss saying that the oh yeah, the boss is saying that he basically they're outsourcing jobs, call center in India, and the Todd, he realizes that his job, as well as the people working there with him, are all gone, basically, they're gonna get let go or fired. And although he stays, that's kind of similar to Bank Job, where they both have financial hardship aspects in them that leads to other things, just very different things, especially because they were set in different times. And then at the end of Outsourced, when the boss comes back, or comes to India to visit the call center that Todd is running, he mentions how they're moving the call center to China, which already has one up and running. And I just feel like that, um as it mentioned in the media readings for that we get for all the movies, that was kind of India started to lose their competitive edge, that they had with China, because China and India had a lot of outsourced jobs and call centers and stuff like that from companies in America. And I think that they were kind of showing you, like, they were giving you like a little glimpse into like what um into, I guess, like, to real life, beyond the movie, because when, as like call centers and stuff move to China versus India, a lot of people will also lose those jobs, or um there will be a lack of jobs because a lot of those jobs, or outsourced jobs, are like sought after from people in India, especially like at that time. And then I think it started like in the 90s. But yeah, so if there's less of those jobs, a lot of people don't have as many opportunities, because those are moving to somewhere else like China. And so I think that financial hardship aspect is definitely like a theme in both movies. Um, and then let's see what I wrote down. Oh, I also put like, so I I kind of thought that another similarity was like corporate America, how like the big corporate companies, like the one that Terry worked at. I think it was called Western. I'm not sure though. But yeah, that company, stuff like that. I kind of think that they're like a little similar to the cops in bank job, like the officers, in the sense that like they both have an agenda to get something done, and regardless of like the outcome, or not the outcome, regardless of like the um I guess like the surrounding like effects to people, or like um regardless of what needs to be done, they both have like this agenda to achieve something. Like with the companies in America, for example, they want to outsource jobs, like to India or China. And I think that that is very like, a lot of, why that happens is because it's cheaper. It's cheaper labor for the same amount of work. And of course, like if you're a company, you want to save money, and by saving money, that means like, money that doesn't have to be used. So essentially, you're gaining profit. And I think that a lot of the times, like, that was done and will be done regardless of like the consequences, or like without actually knowing like what's going on behind, like the actual call centers. Like, the boss, for example, in the movie, in Outsourced, he like basically just came to tell them, hey, like, you guys don't have a job anymore. um but throughout the movie, there's like this theme in Outsourced that kind of, that's like, what did I write down? It's like culture assimilation. Yeah, culture assimilation, where Terry starts, sort of into the movie, like starts to try to, not be so off put by like the culture in India. And in the beginning, um Asha, I think, and a lot of the people in the call center are confused because they're like, they're explaining things that, or they're asking questions and explaining like why it's weird to them, Western American culture versus like their culture. And things like that, like assimilating other people to be able to, take a call from like an American who would get upset just hearing like a different type of accent. And that kind of reminded me of, and not just that, but like I think in real life, companies, um especially big companies, will tend to do things like kind of under the table or secretly, without like caring about the consequences, or like they'll use like very like unfair and cheap labor, or it'll be like slave labor, stuff like that. And so yeah, so like that kind of thing is what I'm talking about, where like they don't really care what's happening behind what they can't see, and if they can see it, it's still there, I think that a lot of times, profit is more important to big companies, that than the like moral, like, and physical aspects of like the people working and stuff like that, and the conditions, and environment and stuff like that are, important to them. And that reminds me of like the cops in Bank Job, because like they literally let these robbers that they knew rob the bank with a lot of money. Um, they literally let them go in exchange for like something else to, you know, I think, what did they? I think they got the photos. It was definitely, I feel like the photos were a big thing. It was definitely like, I think for selfish reasons, for their like their what do you, not company, because you can't, as cops don't have like a company, but I guess like their I don't know the word I'm thinking of. The cops, the I think the cops wanted um to steal that kind of accomplishment, and like to be the ones to have like all the evidence, or to arrest someone, or like basically they let the robbers go for their own benefit. um and that was regardless of like getting back the things that the that people owned in the safety deposit boxes. And that was like disregarding even the deaths that happened. Like obviously a lot of the deaths were from the banks, like Terry's friends and stuff, but you know I think a lot of things were let go, especially the bank robbers, like literally, in exchange for something, right? And I think that like the agendas of the cops and a lot of times corporate America is, they're similar, I think. But yeah, hopefully I explained that right. I don't really know like how else to say that, but yeah. And then some differences I put were that there's a lot of differences, of course, but I think the main one is that Bank Job was about, a robbery that happened, and I think it dealt with a lot like of gangs, killings, and a lot more politics, in my opinion, than Outsourced did. Outsourced, I think, was kind of like a breath of fresh air compared to Bank Job. It was a different, feel and different vibe completely. Um, and it hit a lot more, um, towards like the cultural side. I think it was culturally more abundant than, what do you call it? Than Bank Job was. And Bank Job was more political. And so I think that for me was the key differences that I saw like immediately. Um, but yeah, I think that Outsource got a few, they got some stuff right about like the culture there. Some of it was just kind of like, to be silly or like over exaggerate. Um, and I think that for Bank Job, I think it had a lot to do with politics, because not only were like the cops and stuff involved and like high profile people, but um, there was like even like Malcolm, not Malcolm, I wrote down Malcolm, but Michael X. He was like a black activist. He was a black man who also fought for black rights, and he was an activist. Um, but he still was like, I think, in my opinion, like in the political realm, because he, in the beginning of the movie, like he was getting interviewed by reporters and stuff and having his picture taken. He was like well known, but also kind of, like this, similar to like the dirty cops. Like he was not the greatest dude. He was doing some pretty sketchy things, but yeah, he was very politically involved, I think, with other political figures as well. Him himself, I don't think necessarily being a political figure, but he was involved with that. And of course the dirty cops and like all that stuff, like the high profile people. But yeah, I think that those movies were definitely different, but there was like a few like key similarities. especially like in the beginning and the end. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching.